Welcome to Cult and Classic.
All right, friends and fiends of the pod, welcome to another episode of Cult and Classic. As always, I'm your host, Nate Wyckoff, comedian and horrornews.net staff writer. I want to take this moment before I get to anyone else, because it's all about Cult and Classic podcast, to suggest you go check out our Patreon, brand new at patreon.com/Cult and Classic podcast. We want you to be able to support us, the podcast you love. And if you don't love us, we want you to be able to give us money so we can improve and become the podcast that you love. What is even better about this is it can cost you as low as $1 a month, and you get access to videos of all of our recorded sessions. So you can see our beautiful shining faces, including those of many of our famous interviews, of which we have awesome lineups coming up for you. Also, you can be a Patreon member and get autographed art trading cards, which are Cult and Classic exclusives and exclusive zines through our membership tiers. So check it out, patreon.com/Cult and Classic podcast. Also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and everywhere that you are. Okay, so this episode I'm super excited about, a very special first edition of our Love Hate podcast special. So that is a film that we love and a film that we hate, and we will tell you exactly why you should love and hate them yourselves. With us today, we have the full crew. We have Tad Mastroianni. How you doing, Tad?
Heyo.
And Tad just recently bought a house and has another baby on the way, which would be number 2. So he's doing nothing with his life. I don't know why.
It's exactly why I have been mysteriously absent.
Yeah, I don't know why you're not here every week. Coming up as well, we have Greg Johnson. How you doing, Greg?
I've actually decided I don't want to be on the podcast anymore, so
silent
I'm going to bounce.
And up next, we have the wonderful Amanda Longley. How you doing, Mandy?
I'm good today.
Good today, as opposed to other days.
Today? Oh, no.
You got to pick the movies you talk about, so you're good today.
Yeah, well, yes, exactly. Very happy. Couldn't be happier today.
And I think that's everyone. I'm just kidding. We still have our old standby Jeff Tucker. How you doing, Jeff?
Good.
That's it. All right. That's all I have. That's all I can afford today from Jeff.
Well, you gave me a shitty intro, so I'm going to give you a shitty follow-up.
We love everyone. And remember, you can join the conversation by emailing us at cultandclassicpodcast@gmail.com. And I promise that is the last advertisement for a while. Today, we're going to talk about movies that we adore, that we think everyone should watch, and movies that we despise. And we will tell you exactly why they're the bane of our existence. First, I'm going to go to Greg. Greg, what movie do you love?
I cheated a little bit, and I picked a two-part film called Bahubali, both of which are on Netflix right now. So Bahubali the beginning and Bahubali the conclusion.
Nice. Well, let me play a little clip here from the trailer for Bahubali the beginning, so people can get kind of a vibe. And of course, it is in Bengali, I think.
Yeah, it's in. I wrote it down, Telugu and Tamil. I'll talk about that after the clip.
I literally got everything wrong. But yes, so my apologies. Sound like amazing languages. But let's listen to this little clip here. Yes, it sounds a little bit like the music you'd hear in maybe a New Age shop or something, but I want to choose that because just from looking at these films, I can tell they are epic, and this music starts to set it up as kind of like this grand scale affair. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not, I think it falls under the like Bollywood umbrella, but I know that it had some subgenre within that, so I apologize for not being as on point with that. But going back to the languages, actually the Telugu and the Tamil, apparently it was filmed in 2 languages simultaneously, which are both prominent languages of India, and half of the cast spoke one language and half of the cast spoke the other. So you'd have actors and actresses throwing their own native language at each other while the other one was maybe doing a different language, and then they went back, had them re-record their lines in the language they didn't do, and then dubbed all that over to have a simultaneous release.
That's crazy. And I mean, that sort of reminds me of those of us who've listened all the way since the beginning. We had a mini episode where I talked about Dead or Alive, the movie based off the video game, where they had something like over a dozen foreign languages shot on set, and it was a nightmare. So I can imagine that even with 2, you definitely had a different experience on set.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it got a little bit wild at times, and there were other languages as well. Weirdly, at least on Netflix, they have an English dub over for the beginning, but not for the conclusion. So I thought that was a little bit odd. But yeah, I think well, one, this is basically a fantasy epic. I loved it. It is 5 hours total, so definitely get some food if you're gonna sit down and try and do it all.
It looks more like a martial arts epic too, right? Like there's a lot of choreography.
Yeah, yeah, definitely a lot of fighting, a lot of songs, a lot of dancing, a lot of over-the-top drama. The songs, going back to those, are absolutely hilarious but wonderful at the same time. Like I'm trying, like, basically all the songs kind of switch between kind of more metaphorical lyrics discussing kind of the themes occurring, or being more straightforward about like, oh, here comes Bahubali, like he's about to fight this guy and punch him out, he's gonna beat this guy, and like they're just kind of narrating what's happening, but it's all, as you kind of heard from the music, like very whimsical, over the top. It's some chanting, some singing.
What is, so I mean, it sounds like, I mean, when I watched just the trailers, it was almost like it felt like kind of a mix between like a Prince of Persia, Lord of the Rings with like a Hindi vibe, like just this really like you said, a fantasy, but really epic. Like there's giant statues and cityscapes and over the top weapons, and totally, it seemed like the kind of thing that I should have heard of, and I have never seen this film.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward story overall. A kid kind of vanishes at birth, is taken away like in the middle of like a coup, and slowly realizes who he is, which is the crown prince of this city. So the first half is really the kid's story, him growing up, him learning who he is, and then the second half is his father's story and what happened, and then kind of the big clash at the end where he takes on his like usurper uncle.
So it's basically the Lion King.
Yeah, it's the Bollywood Lion King.
which was the Disney Hamlet. Okay, I get you. All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm sold on this movie series. I literally was pulling the clip this morning like, oh, okay, I'm gonna watch this. That brings us to the question, what is your favorite moment out of that duo?
It's again a little cheating. It's 2 moments, because in the beginning, you see this scene with the usurped queen, or at least the usurped princess, and she is kind of pacing around. She's a prisoner, and this guy comes to her and is like, oh, like, why are you like pacing around and picking up twigs? Like, have you gone mad? And she like turns to him all dramatically. The music's flaring up, and she is like, I am collecting twigs to build a bed of flames, and like that is what I will throw the king upon. And then in the second film, near the end, the final battle is around that bed, and like the tentacular Bahubali is like, I'm like before you have paced around this building 3 times, I will have put him upon the bed. And so it just this kind of wonderfully dramatic moment at the beginning where you're like, that's so intense and so visceral and like such a like specific way to say that someone's gonna die, and then in the second it actually comes to pass. But yeah, it's just a satisfying moment.
And that's the thing. It seems like, especially, I mean, if you look at the reviews, people love this movie, cross culture, this series, and so I'm excited to see it. And I have to say, so we've talked about some maybe Western comparisons, but if someone's favorite, who would you recommend this to if their favorite movie is something? So if their favorite movie is this, why would you recommend this film, or would you recommend this film?
Well, I mean, you did mention Lord of the Rings. I'd say yeah, like if you're a fan of that. But I was thinking about like a foreign film. Actually, I think if you like Kung Fu Hustle, I think that this would
With
be
the dancing, we were
yeah.
just talking about that movie today, me and my wife.
And that definitely I feel like dealt with its own set of issues, whereas Bahubali deals very much with Indian culture. It deals with themes of kind of the caste system. Stacking hierarchies of duty and kind of like, well, my duties to my country, but I specifically pledged to the king. So if the king is not for the country, then where does my loyalty actually lie? I think that's but Kung Fu Hustle, I think, yeah, if you like that, this is the easy jump.
And I just, for those listening, it may sound, because it did to me, sort of like Siddhartha in the epic, as in there's these really sort of poetic moments, like before you pace around this house 3 times. To Western ears, it probably almost sounds like a biblical story, which it kind of is for Indian culture. It's that sort of vibe, and I really enjoyed seeing that just in the trailer. So I look forward to spotting it. Now we're going to move on to a film you hate. What is this film?
I picked 2012's ABCs of Death. I was hoping at least someone else has seen this. No?
I have seen this film, and I've got a clip for us, so let's listen. And before everyone who hasn't seen this film, it is an anthology series. So there's like 26 films basically, or short, if you can call some of them that, that deal with letters, start with letters of the alphabet. And this is a clip from my personal favorite, T is for Toilet. Here we go.
Can't understand why he's so afraid of the toilet.
Well, for young boys, the most common cause for genital injury is when the toilet seat falls down.
He's not going to have that problem if he's going for a poo.
Loads of people died on the toilet.
Like who?
Elvis.
He died on the bathroom floor.
Yeah, died on the toilet and then fell over. If I were him, I'd be more scared of those screws I put in. It's the wrong size.
So, and that is actually a claymation short, which I think sets it fried. But Greg, what is it about this movie? First off, why did you watch this movie?
I had heard about it from someone, or just kind of browsing like films you have to see before you die, or like cult classics, just various lists. I saw this pop up a couple times and I'm like, well, okay, like there's some common ground. Let's give it a whirl. I am glad that you picked T for Toilet though, because that is one of the shorts I actually liked. Which I feel like that's why I hated this so much, is because there's 2 or 3 that are really, really stellar. That being one of them. I think I also put like J is for Jedi Geki, which is like, it's this samurai who's about to like behead someone, and the person about to be beheaded like keeps making silly faces and he can't concentrate to like chop his head off. Just some very fun ideas, but God, like around F is for Fart, which is about like a woman fixated with another woman's farts and their weird love triangle, which involves her like, I think, going up her asshole and living in her stomach. D is for Dogfight, where I'm pretty sure they actually had a fucking dogfight. Like I was watching that one and I'm like, none of this looks staged. Like this looks like a dogfight.
No one knows they're in a movie right now.
Yeah. But honestly, I don't know. I felt like watching this, I'm like, this is every single example of why you don't let a first year film student do whatever the fuck they want.
And by the way, I will say this, Greg and I both went to Chapman University for our undergrads, and that was Chapman Film School's like claim to fame when they first opened their big new film school, which is beautiful, the Dodge Film and Media Center. And their thing is, we give everyone a camera right away. Other people have to work on group films, and I will tell you something, that is often a poor decision. Because there is something to be said for letting directors know that maybe they're not the best writers, and maybe you need to learn some things. Because I sat through so many short films that were basically, I'm on my own now, I can talk about sex and have people swear. very tiring, and I get it. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of shorts in there where you're like, this was picked because it was bizarre, not because it's good.
Yeah, do you want to watch a dude try and jack off to a kid? Do you want to watch a cat get stomped out? Like, just pick the worst fucking shit you can imagine, and it's all here. And it's just terrible.
And I mean, it's interesting if you go. I urge people who haven't seen this film to go on IMDb and look up the list of directors, because there's some really great directors in there, including Ty West, who's worked on House of the Devil and The Innkeepers, things like that, and he did M's for Miscarriage, which is really not in his normal wheelhouse. So it's like there's a sequel as well, ABCs of Death 2, and there are also, if you go to YouTube, a million short films for these as well, like T is for Torture, things like that, because they had a competition for people to make short films based on these, and then they picked from them. So interesting experiment. I think you've named some of its worst moments. What's a better alternative to this movie?
Well, actually, since you mentioned the short films, I got two recommendations. One, if you've never read the anthology, I think it's called Machine of Death. Go ahead and read that. It's basically, a prompt was given where a machine, you go and you press it or whatever the writer wants, but the machine gives you one or two words that tell you how you're going to die. And all the stories are just around that, like how this world works where this machine exists. If you're looking for something to watch, I wrote down Trick or Treat. I'm trying to remember what year that was, but it's like a horror anthology revolving around this little like spooky kid in a costume named Sam who kind of ties them all together. Yep. And is like a Halloween spirit, so to say.
Anna Paquin, Brian Cox, 2007. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, that's so much more interesting. Every single like story in that was engaging and unique and just kind of fun, and the fact that it all felt tied together versus this, like, ultimately it just felt like they had kind of an idea and wanted to see what people did with it. And like you said, like you get some really good ones and there's some really talented directors, but then you get a lot of just absolute trash. Just
yeah,
like,
and if anyone's interested, Machine of Death is from 2012. It's edited by Ryan North, who is famous for a lot of things, including writing the Adventure Time comics, which are seriously brilliant. They are brilliant. They're not just like, oh, extra stories or side stories. They're super awesome. And Matthew Bernardo and David Malky. So check that out. Machine of Death, 2010 book. Matthew Bernardo, Ryan North, David Malky. Okay. Last question on this. Is there anyone you would recommend ABCs of Death to?
Nazis. There's a lot of Nazi shit in here, so I guess if you're into that, there's at least 3 or 4 shorts just for you.
So yeah, if you've gotten tired of watching Apt Pupil and Downfall like 20 dozen times, then go ahead and watch this film. All right. So that is it for Greg's love-hate list. We're going to move this along in a different direction. Mandy, let's talk about your love. What movie do you love?
Okay, so I went about this as picking a movie I hated, and then I picked one that I loved that paired with it, because I have too many love movies, I guess. So I picked Ever After with the illustrious Drew Barrymore.
All right, Ever After, a Cinderella story. Let's listen to a clip from the trailer. I think many people will have seen this film, but I do think, this was my case too, until my wife brought it up, because it's also one of her favorite movies, I feel like it's a film that a lot of people saw when it came out, but haven't maybe rewatched, and I think that it's worth it. So let's listen to this.
Then it's true, the story.
Oh, yes. Now then, what is that phrase you use? Once upon a time.
Feels just like Christmas. I get a mother and sisters all in one day.
And let's just listen and enjoy that 1998 soundtrack, because that is so very on point for when this movie was just massive. And this movie also, just to kind of start, Andy Tennant directed it, and he directed a lot of the sort of romance comedies that we remember from recent memory, like Fool's Gold, Hitch, Sweet Home Alabama. He's well versed in this genre. What why did you see this movie when it came out? I assume, Mandy.
I probably saw it when it came out in a theater because I was its target audience of a teenage girl who adored Drew Barrymore. So they got me. But as you mentioned, I have gone back and watched this several times. I know it's like used to be on TV a lot. Now it's I couldn't really find it on streaming. I thought I had a DVD of it. It disappeared. I don't know. But it's definitely one of those ones I'd love to put on in the background. And yeah, so I guess I don't know.
It's streaming on Cinemax right now. If anybody has the Cinemax channel, it is streaming there.
Yeah. All right.
So what's this movie about? I mean, it's called Ever After, a Cinderella Story. It's a little self-explanatory, but I think there's a little more to it.
There's a little more. Like, I guess you have Drew Barrymore's character named Danielle, and the follows the normal storyline of Cinderella, but with a twist is that she's a very modern, very strong female lead character. She's a princess who rescues herself. She's not going to take any sass from this prince who is interested in her. She kind of he gets interested in her because he thinks she's someone else or a courtier because she dresses up to rescue one of her servants from being shipped to the Americas. And this takes place in France. So it's just like, it's a different take, like a much stronger independent version of Cinderella, but she still gets her prince in the end.
And I think it's important to mention that Angelica Houston is essentially the wicked stepmother in this film. And you actually, I mean, she is the wicked stepmother, but you also kind of feel kind of bad for her in the beginning because it opens with her marriage and moving in. We hear that little clip from the trailer of Drew Barrymore's character as a child being like, oh, it's so great. It's like Christmas. I get a whole new family. And then instantly the father dies, like right away. Like the mother and the new siblings get to the house and then the father dies. And all of a sudden, Angelica Houston's character has to sort of make do as a single woman in this time. So I feel like she's not a nice character. In fact, she's quite awful and you don't like her. But at the same time, it gave her this level of depth that you don't get in a typical, like, you know, like thinking of the Disney rehash of Rapunzel, which people love for some reason, Tangled. Sorry, guys. I don't think it's a good movie. Not my hate list, but not a good movie. But we're like, yeah, the mom is just evil. Just evil. There's no excuse. And I don't think that this one is that way.
No, I didn't feel that way about her either. I mean, she is horrible. But she's also like, she is trying to navigate like a difficult situation. There are some glimpses into the fact that she did actually care about her husband that she married. She didn't just marry him for a position or money. Like it's very like kind of well balanced and done where you just see a little bit of that and then you're left considering maybe her deeper feelings. But you know, she's also just very ambitious and she wants her biological daughters to have it all. And she will stop at nothing to get it done.
And she's Angelica Houston, so normally she would get it. What if you could pick one moment? What's your favorite moment from this movie?
My absolute favorite moment from this movie is when she saves the prince from the gypsies, and it is based on an old story of a sieged castle where women were allowed to carry whatever, like to take whatever they could carry away from that site where there was a battle going to take place. And what they did was they chose to carry their men out in a way to safety. And because, you know, people are of, you know, honorable reputations and whatnot, they let that happen. But I just thought it was a great turn of the tables for them to do that in this story where she could be the hero and she saved the prince.
Yeah, it really was like a sort of precursor to that Shrek Matrix moment, right? Where she you know kicks the butt of the thieves and Shrek is surprised. Just had to work Shrek in there somehow.
Yeah, I love Shrek too.
Why would you recommend people watch this movie if you had to argue it in court?
Okay, so I would say that this is actually also one of the ones I'd recommend for my hated movie as like an alternate, because I think it does a really good job not only turning the tables on the story. I think that it delivered what I expected, which was a Cinderella story with Drew Barrymore, right? But they also mix in Leonardo da Vinci in there. So there's some like historical stuff that's not all lined up with actual history, but it's in there as a nice flavor. It has great costumes. It has chocolate, like they introduced chocolate from, was it Spain? And I thought that was nice. But also, like, I just really liked that it made Danielle and the prince feel very modern in this like period piece. So they were like on the edge of like getting the new food and like reading the new books and having the new like liberal ideas and wanting to like push the boundaries of what the current king and queen were doing in the kingdom. So I think that it, you know, it challenges sort of the stereotypical period piece, and it actually gives those main characters a very kind of modern feel.
That's interesting, and I want to say too. You mentioned Leonardo da Vinci. He does provide some of the comedy relief in this film, and I think he does a great job. And he's played by Patrick Godfrey, who you probably would recognize him. I mean, he's like 87 now, so he's been around. He's still alive, still acting. But gamers will probably recognize his voice. He did voices in Red Dead Redemption 2, BioShock 2. He plays a lot of the old grumbly, gruff voices. So he's recognizable both in face and in voice. So, okay, you tried to flip the script. You tried to give this to me as also a hate. I totally respect that. But what film did you choose for your I Hate It film? Okay,
so wow, again, they got me in the original marketing. So it was maybe their target audience, or they got my friends. And the movie was A Knight's Tale. So I was in college, dating myself a little, because we know when this movie came out.
2001.
In 2001. And I had a bunch of friends that were into like period reenactment type stuff. It was not exactly my thing, but they're like, come with us. And I'm like, oh, I love like British period films and TV shows and stuff. I was raised on Are You Being Served? Like, it's totally my jam. I'll go with you. That's great. We go in, but I had this total like serious frame of mind. Like, this is going to be a serious movie about jousting. And it opens up with We Will Rock You.
Yeah, let's take a listen. Let's take a listen from the trailer here.
I was pissed.
There you go. And this is, of course, the Heath Ledger film from 2001, A Knight's Tale.
Believes enough, a man can do anything.
And interestingly enough, this if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a big horror fan. Of course, the director for Knight's Tale is Brian Helgeland, who's often thought of as a pretty mainstream director. He did Knight's Tale, A Man on Fire with Denzel Washington, 42. He wrote the award-winning LA Confidential, but he actually started in horror films. He wrote Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, and one of the best 80s horror films, 976 Evil. So remember that when you watch his movies. He cut his teeth on those crazy, crazy 80s horrors. So, Knight's Tale, you were pissed. Tell me about that reaction.
I was so pissed. And it wasn't just like I was pissed in the beginning. I just stayed pissed through the whole thing and completely missed it. Like, I could see, I think, what they were trying to do. I'm like, oh, they're trying to make this cool and funny and whatever. It did not matter because I was just upset from the start. Just continued. Anyway, so that was it. But I couldn't leave because I was there with friends. I think I might have walked out had I gone alone. But having watched some behind the scenes interviews with Brian, I understand what he was trying to do now with making it have a modern feel, portraying the joust as sort of like a concert tour that like groupies would go along and see their favorite band like play over and over again in all these different cities and have these big after parties. And really like the whole like culture that was around it with dating or hooking up, I guess would be like a modern equivalent of that. But there's like a romance subplot to this movie. And so I get it. And he tried to show that by using like modern language, modern music, modern mannerisms, and even going so far as using the Nike logo. It's like modern marketing to get these jokes. And so like, yeah, okay, I get it. But like, I don't know, maybe this is a case of like a writer also being the director or a director being the writer for like this pet project piece. And it like just didn't really hit well for me. It just, I could see what was going on, but it just felt a little bit clumsy or like either not quite obvious enough or all the way. So I'd say that's why it didn't really work for me. And so, okay, I think when this movie came out too, I think a lot of us who saw the previews with the music and everything were really thinking of 96's Romeo and Juliet by Baz Luhrmann, right? Which is super famous at this point. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes, John Leguizamo was in that, where they mixed contemporary setting and music with the almost straight Shakespearean play dialogue, right? Which was a really weird juxtaposition. And I think I remember seeing A Knight's Tale and being like, oh, maybe they were trying too hard. Although I did end up warming to it as it goes on. And also it has Rufus Sewell in it, who is the lead in one of my all-time favorite movies, which I almost chose as my love movie this week, which is Dark City with Kiefer Sutherland, which is so freaking good. I like that one too.
And of course, I think everybody who loves Knight's Tale loves it partially because of Paul Bettany playing Chaucer. His monologues and his drunken buffoonery in this film are excellent. And every time I see a Marvel film with Vision in it, which of course he plays, I'm sad because they never give him any chance to act at all. At all. He's literally, it's like, oh, he's a robot. Well, he's basically a copy machine that can walk around. So that's a side note. So Knight's Tale didn't work for you. I think there are people who agree with you, although I think there's a lot worse. Do you have a worst moment in this one?
I mean, I already mentioned it was like the We Will Rock You just kind of like set it off as whatever.
Is literally the opening. I mean,
it's literally the opening. But like the other really worst moment for me was like the romance scene where Jocelyn tells Will to lose the tournament because all of the other guys are saying, we'll win this tournament for you. So she wants the opposite, but it's just like this horribly toxic dynamic thrown into the romance. And I could not.
Mandy, I'm glad you pointed that out because by coincidence, just a couple of days ago, I watched Knight's Tale with my wife. And that moment, I was like, bitch, I'm not losing for shit. I'm not losing for you. This is my job. Like, it was such a...
all my friends just bet all their money on this. Not that he knew that, like he kept the secret, but spoilers. But like, yeah, I was like, this is so terrible.
Yeah, I feel like it was sort of, and anyone listening who is young or is immature romantically, that's okay. We all go through that. And we all know each other on this podcast. I guarantee each one of us could probably point out some immaturity about each other at this point. That is across the board. But it does seem like one of those like insane things that's just a trope from romances, and you see it and you're like, are you fucking madness? Like every time the guy doesn't take, or the woman now doesn't take the promotion and just like, I thought you were supposed to be in France. You are my France. You're like, no, that's stupid. That's really stupid. Like, you should be the editor of Vogue. I don't know why you're back in, Pun-Up Squat. Like, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, I get that. So with all that considered, what's a movie you would recommend to someone who's interested in Knight's Tale instead of Knight's Tale?
Well, you stole my thunder a little because what I had put on my cheat sheet was the Romeo and Juliet because they really went there.
Yeah.
Like, you want to see that juxtaposition, like, much more serious. I really went there. If you're a fan of Firefly and you just want more Alan Tudyk, I never say his last name right. Tudyk. If you just want more Alan in your life, watch this movie because he does a great character called Watt, which is very similar to Wash from Firefly. So you can get a little bit a taste there for Lost Firefly love. And yeah, I guess that would be it. And I would say, like, as far as other period films that maybe have like like interesting romantic aspects or like a modern feel to them, I would recommend Elizabeth and Elizabeth the Golden Age with, I think that was Kate Blanchett.
Mm-hmm.
As,
Who is wonderful.
Yeah, but neither of those are comedies. They're both very serious.
Fair. I would throw in there also for me, my wife introduced me to this film, and I adore this film from 2004, Stage Beauty. It was actually, I believe it was actually an MTV production at the time, but with Billy Crudup and again Claire Danes and Rupert Everett. It's directed by Richard Eyre. It's awesome. It's about the transition of female character roles in England being played by men into women, and Billy Crudup is a gay man who has only made a career of playing women, and now he's finding himself ousted. And it's a really brilliant film, and it's absolutely hilarious as well. And it is a period film. The only thing that's a little problematic is the way they kind of play the end like a romance, which is after you've watched the movie, you're like, oh yeah, that's stupid. That's not canon. I literally am chopping this film off with 3 minutes left. But totally Stage Beauty 2004. Give that one a go too. Okay, so that is an interesting, if controversial take, Mandy. Thank you so much. We're gonna go.
You're welcome.
We're gonna go.
Incoming.
We're gonna come here to Tad Mastroianni. Tad, what is the film that you love?
Bum Fights 3.
Ah.
No. Oh, we're gonna start with my love. Yes, of course we are. It's Lance Mungia and Jeffrey Falcon's Six String Samurai from 1998, which
Okay.
I'm fairly sure that Nate and Jeff and I have all watched together at some point.
I watched this film because you recommended this, and I absolutely adore this film. Let's just play this clip from this indie flick from 1998, right? Is that what you said? This
great.
is from the trailer, and it really sets things up nicely.
In 1957, the bomb dropped. The last bastion of freedom became a place called Las Vegas, and Elvis was crowned king. Now his only heir has died, and Vegas needs a new king.
There we go. It literally is an Elvis Costello lookalike with dual acoustic electric guitar and a
Samurai sword
wandering a post-apocalyptic desert.
This was a movie that I'm pretty sure that the reason I watched this movie was just because it was called Six String Samurai. I loved martial arts films. It was sitting in the shelf at a movie scene when I was working at the video store, and I thought to myself, you know what, this seems like my kind of movie, and boy, was it. And anyone who's listened to any of my comments on movies, I always talk about the soundtrack and how important that is to me. And this movie, it's shining red jewel in the middle, and I mean red on purpose, is the Red Elvises, which are a fantastic band. The introduction to them in this movie was probably my favorite moment. But this movie hooked me right from the beginning. Just a weird mix of a martial arts spaghetti western and a post-apocalyptic Mad Max type movie with a bunch of stuff literally ripped right out of Star Wars while we're at it. Why don't we just steal from everything? And it worked. And it only cost like $2 million to make this movie. And you look at it and you think they probably could have made this movie for less. They could have made more of a profit.
That's totally accurate.
Yeah, I mean the costumes are ratty as you'd expect them to be, but at the same time you look at them and they still feel crisp, like someone put some real effort into every single one of them. Though I mean most of the plot is basically Buddy, the main character, is trying to get to Las Vegas. He runs into a kid called The Kid. This kid can't talk. All he does throughout the entire movie is This is not like, this kid is incredibly annoying. It's probably the only thing that I knock this movie for is the fact that it's basically the silent sidekick, except and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of media that I feel references this movie that people would never realize because it's a highly unknown film. For one thing, I mean, I'll get to it later when I talk about my recommendation, but when you think about 2017's Logan, and you think about how it's sort of kind of, I mean, it's a spaghetti, they're both spaghetti Western kind of style movies, so you're going to have that. But it was kind of interesting to think back and realize how much they improved that trope with X-23. X-23 was kind of annoying at first, but she was feral. It was absolutely expected. And then this kid's feral too, so it was expected. It's just one just worked better than the other. And
like you said, when you mentioned their dynamic, it's really it's clearly a take on the lone wolf and cub, what has become the lone wolf and cub trope, which of course is based off the film series, which is itself based off the amazing classic manga series by Kazuo Koike and Goseki Kojima. And it's basically a wandering samurai protecting this child, who the child also ends up becoming helpful as well as difficult to care for. And it's got this, and like you said, the Red Elvis is doing the soundtrack. I mean, that rockabilly soundtrack, you start to hear it in that trailer. It is ever present, and it is so brilliant. And the characters are so wackadoo, like totally off the wall. And it really does play like a Lone Wolf and Cub, Akira Kurosawa samurai epic, but with this 50s Vegas like veneer on this Mad Max landscape. And it's brilliant. And you, like I said, you introduced this film to me, and it has been literally on my head ever since, 20 plus years later.
Don't touch my guitar, man. Don't even touch my guitar.
And like I said, he's an Elvis Costello lookalike. He's really a Buddy Holly lookalike, but let's face it, Elvis Costello tries to look like Buddy Holly. So we talked about it. Do you have a favorite moment in this film?
I mean, I think it's the most talked about outside of the introduction with the Red Elvises. It's the final fight when basically Buddy is being chased by literal death throughout, and his gang of ring wraiths. And the best part is that it's obvious that death is Slash. It's Slash is chasing him. You can't see his face, but you also can't see Slash's face, so you don't know it's not Slash. But it's a great again, it's the same parallel. It's the main character realizes he's not going to make it, but he sacrifices himself to give the kid some time, and actually the kid ends up just beaten death anyway, because it pulls the old Ernest Halloween bullshit, spit on the bad guy, and all of a sudden, oh, they melt, sweet, kill him.
Right. It's the same trope that they used at the end of Harry Potter, the first Harry Potter, the first book, the Sorcerer's Stone, and the first movie. It's like, oh, it's the power of love in this stone that defeats him. It's like, okay, it's kryptonite, I get it. Like it just so happened to be there, but I'll buy it because I enjoyed the ride. It
was probably the first film instance I ever saw of a sword duel that ended with a guitar duel, and then someone getting pumped with arrows. So basically, it had everything.
I think it's pretty great myself, and I wouldn't be surprised if this popped up on a future episode, panel discussion on Cult and Classic podcast here. I want to say too, I think a lot of what you've mentioned comes down to the fact this is clearly a labor of love. It was directed by Lance Mungia, and it was written by Jeffrey Falcon, who plays Buddy, and Lance Mungia, and it is, as you said, very intentional. Everything is intentional. The costuming, even the sparseness of the set, it was all designed to work with what they had. And because of that, it does. And the idea of using a samurai film, which often these samurai films, like the westernized version with The Last Samurai, they're about the end of this feudal way of the samurai, right? Like the encroachment of Western society and a different set of operating rules, wiping out this cast of people. And then in this case, it's very similar with this Buddy Holly takeaway from this alternate 50s being pushed out by this metalhead horseman, kind of easing that music into the past. So it's really multi-leveled, and it's a goofy premise with a goofy cast of characters and goofy scenes that really has a strong undercurrent of societal parallels, which I think is pretty cool.
It's one of the reasons why I love the movie, because for a cult film that basically hardly has a plot, there is an awful lot of symbolism if you dig a little bit, which I can't say about a lot of those cult films. You know, there's not always a whole lot of substance. It's usually just, this is the plot, we wanted to be zany, and they did it. They just, you know, there was enough substance under it to see there was indeed a plan the whole time.
Yeah, and I think that's fair criticism because of cult films in general, because I love them, obviously, as starting this podcast and writing about them for the past decade. But like, I'm a huge Godzilla fan, and Godzilla's, if there's a message, it's one note, which is nuclear bombs bad. That's pretty much clear, and pretty much goes out the window as soon as we get to a giant thunder lizard trashing buildings. But like you said, this has more to it.
And Jeffrey Falcon is basically discount Ray Park, which is probably why a lot of people still don't know who he is. And if you don't know who Ray Park is, if you don't know who Ray Park is, that you have bigger problems. But Jeffrey Falcon had a very long and storied career in Hong Kong film for years before he made this, and it's easy to see where he got some inspirations from when helping write the script.
For sure. And I think for anyone who isn't familiar with Hong Kong cinema, it is my favorite cinema legacy, partially because they make so many films. And yes, it is because of things like non-standardized work hours and non-standardized safety procedures and things like that. But it's also because there's a love for cinema, and it's for those people who make 76 movies in their lifetime, which is unheard of here. Every single one tends to have an aspect of themselves and this extra layer of thought put into it that you're like, oh, it's just an action movie. No, it's just an action movie when we make, you know, Hard Way here in the West. But when they make it, there's a little bit more thought to it. Whether it's successful or not, that's up to debate. But there's some element in there, cultural or societal, that is really interesting. And I think that's what you're getting at. So who would you recommend this film to?
This is a recommendation I would make to people who obviously love Westerns, homages to Hong Kong cinema, just, you know, maybe people who love the post-apocalyptic Mad Max style kind of movies, but also people who love the Fallout series, because it was clearly inspired, and not only that, inspired Fallout later. Fallout, yes. If listeners don't know, is a video game series based around the exact same premise. We get nuked, except it was basically by a large consortium of different communist nations in an alternate 1950s setting. And basically that's it. Humanity was thrown back so far, there's really no going forward anymore, except for Vegas. Turns out in one of the sequels, Vegas was spared and is largely still functional, and the main character is wandering towards Vegas. Go fig. And there's actually an achievement in the game for killing a bunch of people with melee weapons.
Yep, that's right. That reflects on Six String Samurai. And I will say this too: if you have even the slightest inkling, or you've had it in the past to play computer games, if you've never played Fallout, the original Fallout you can still buy on Steam and other platforms, and you know, DRM free download for like $6.
Ridiculous.
And it will run on, it doesn't matter if your computer is from 1998, it will run on a literal toaster. Okay. You just have to plug a monitor in, play that game. Beautiful, brilliant writing. Absolutely incredible. Okay. So we've talked about the film you love, Tad. Let's get to the film that you absolutely hate. What is it?
I've been wanting to trash this fucking movie for 15 years now. Has it been 15 years?
Almost. So it's pretty close. It's pretty close.
So this is The Science of Sleep from 2006, which is probably the second work from Michel Gondry that people in the United States would recognize, because Michel Gondry was unknown in America until 2004's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. So when I saw that this movie was coming out, I was all excited because I was a decent fan of Michel Gondry's work. This movie changed my fucking mind.
Let's play a clip from the trailer of this movie, because I think if you haven't really seen Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind or Be Kind, Rewind, some of his other films, Michel Gondry's kind of style, you won't really know what kind of movie we're talking about. But I think that this little bit from the trailer really clues you in.
If you close
the door.
So what's your name?
Stefan?
Stefan? Stephanie? Stefan, Stephanie, click, clack, catch, match. She has no boyfriend.
You can see real life in 3D.
Isn't life already in 3D?
Yeah, but come on.
You might be thinking, huh? Yeah, that's the kind of movie. Okay, so Tad, first off, you saw this movie then because you enjoyed Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Absolutely.
Okay. Why did this film not measure up? Let's go over this. First off, explain what the film is.
Okay, so this film is basically a depressing drama, a romantic drama disguised as a comedy. And one of my biggest problems with European cinema is that I get bait and switched like this all the time. They advertise it as a comedy. It's so whimsical. It's going to be great. And I was like, okay, I'll bite. Let's get in here. And then nope, you get in there and it's like, what in the fuck is going on in this movie? So that trailer is bait and switch number one. It sounds like it's going to be a happy, whimsical, this guy is just kind of like daydreaming all throughout his life and he just gets into crazy mishaps. That's not what this movie's about. What this movie's actually about is a delusional, selfish, manic depressive asshole who is terrible to all the women in his life, has a severe mental disorder that is clearly untreated, and nobody in his life actually has pointed out to him, hey, you may need to get some help. But at the same time, he's a charming motherfucker when he is in his own head. And the main character, Stefan, is played by Gael Garcia Bernal, who I love. I think he's a great actor, and he's very, when he's in the right role, he's a very charming guy. He plays great. He's got a great gravitas around him. This movie it wasted him because the first 10 minutes or so kind of loop you in because it starts off almost like feeling like an old 90s MTV show. It's him in what looks like a newsroom or a studio, and he's talking and being charming. He's playing musical instruments and talking about mixing some stuff together to make dreams. And it's like, all right, this is getting me hooked in. The intro is kind of psychedelic. It's got the lo-fi filter on it, and I'm like, okay, I'm really going to enjoy this. When I rewatched this, just to ensure that I still hated this movie, and age has made it so that I hate it slightly less, just because there are some redeeming qualities in this movie. The visuals are one of them.
It's kind of a Pee-wee's Playhouse kind of insanity, zaniness.
Yes, and they do stuff a decent amount of that in the movie. He does have some moments where he kind of just drifts off in a La La Land, and there's claymation or just weird stop motion all over the place, and it looks fantastic. It feels fantastic. The visual director did a great job with it.
And Mikhail Gondry is kind of famous for that. Like, he actually cut his teeth on a huge number of award-winning and well-known music videos, right? Like, you can actually go buy collections of his music videos from Bjork and to White Stripes. Like, really, it's impressive. He's a great visual sort of maestro that way. But
the man knows what he's doing.
I think you're right, though. This was a severe misadvertisement.
It's not the first time this has happened to me, but yes. So the basic plot is that his father dies, and clearly he was very attached to his father, and the movie doesn't really do a good job. Well, it kind of, there's an undercurrent that it's clear that he was very attached to his father, because I think that's what kind of drove him into the spiral that he's in right now emotionally. He isn't really coping with his father's death. And even I think the romantic interest, Charlotte Gainsbourg's character, actually kind of makes a little joke on accident and feels really bad about it. It's like, oh yeah, my father's still dead. But his mother basically asked him to move back to France from Mexico, even though he's apparently not really all that good at speaking French. But this is actually one of those movies because it's actually I rewatched this on Super Challenge mode because it was dubbed. Actually, no, it was subbed in Dutch. So I didn't have any English subtitles to go by, and it's fortunate I know enough Latin and French to kind of to get by and remember what people are talking about. But it switches constantly between English, French. People are doing it all the time in random spots in the movie, and it's just because it takes place in a workplace where people are multilingual, and it's normal. It doesn't feel jilted or it doesn't feel weird. People just kind of switch languages. It happens. It's not a big deal. But basically, he comes back to France. His mother does everything to set him up so that he can like live a normal life again after literally flying halfway across the world. He's very much not appreciative of it. Basically just like sleeping in what looks like a kid's bed, daydreaming, hates the job that he got because never mind, you know, we have all done it. We got to work so we can live. Very much not appreciative. Well, I get it. He brings his stuff to the boss because he's a creative dude, and he was told this was a creative job. Except all of his creative stuff is highly violent or very, very, very sociopathic almost. And basically, the boss is like, "Get the fuck out of my office. What is wrong with you?" And throughout the film, when he's daydreaming, he's charming. But in real life, everything is either boring as shit because he's either talking to coworkers or talking to women and doing a very poor job of it, or he's having a fucking tantrum. Like literal tantrums. He is a giant man-child with basically no redeemable qualities whatsoever in reality. So the movie does a great job of sticking him into these surreal situations to make him look like he's actually somewhat of a decent person, somewhat redeemable, and then reality snaps in and wow, he's fucking terrible. He's still fucking terrible. At the end of the movie, he's still fucking terrible. There has been no advancement for this character whatsoever.
There's no redemption arc like there is in The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou or something, where there's the final moment where you're like, at least he made peace with his child, you know, like that sort of thing. It sort of reminds me of a less of adult, young adult with Charlize Theron, except without Diablo Cody's like sharp-edged humor and sarcasm. It also, when you're talking about why you hate this film, it reminds me of a Western award-winning film, Silver Linings Playbook, which only barely missed my This Time's Hate It Week. I hate that film because for a similar thing, it's the most, first off, it's a comedy drama romance is what they marketed it as. It is not funny. It is not romantic. And the dramatic part is just super shallow. It is the most shallow interpretation of mental illness I have seen play in cinema quite some time. There are serial killers in, you know, direct-to-video horror films where there's more depth to mental illness because you're basically saying, this guy's a manic depressive. She is like bipolar with, which I guess they're now the same thing. I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist, but with a problem where she sleeps with people to get affection and then pushes them away. And they're going to fix each other by going together because that's what happens. It's like if you took 2 beer bottles and you smashed them on the street and then you crammed them together and you're like, look, it's a beer bottle. It's not how it works. You just get a handful of glass.
I think you just explained how America handles mental illness.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible. I cannot believe it won Best Picture. Literally the most terrible. And fine, Jennifer Lawrence, people like her. I'm not a particularly huge fan, but whatever. Bradley Cooper, great actor. Love him as Rocket Raccoon. Differentiates himself in the role. I mean, Robert De Niro, you gave Chris Tucker another role. Thank you. But the movie's bad. It's a bad movie. And people should feel bad about raising it up as some sort of beautiful story. It's not. It's a terrible, terrible story. Okay. Thank you, Tad. What movie would you recommend instead of The Science of Sleep?
I would recommend Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind because it's basically the same fucking movie. Literally, it's the same goddamn movie. And he went, you know what? I made this movie. America loves it. I'm going to make the French version. And it sucked.
And of course, Eternal Sunshine is... He worked on the story, but he also worked with Charlie Kaufman on the story, whereas he wrote Science of Sleep by himself. And Charlie Kaufman has written some great movies, including Being John Malkovich and Adaptation and some other things. So we can see where some of that maybe Kaufman maybe reined in some of Gondry's more bizarre tendencies, because in a way it sounds almost like Gondry's style of working is similar to the concept of how the character's reacting, right? Like he's got this great stuff, but he's so self-sabotaging by having zero editing and zero ability to control his real life interactions.
It's a common problem, and it's even a problem in Eternal Sunshine. Michael Gondry's writing tends to lean to a sort of realism. It's like realism inception, where it's actors trying to act like real people inside a movie, so nothing feels genuine in the slightest. It all feels
produced.
Yes, and so even when things are trying to be realistic, there's a tinge of just something's off with everybody in the world right now. Like everybody's just like, what is wrong with you? Why are you the way you are?
Yes, and unfortunately, although I will say that Science of Sleep, if you're interested in contemporary adult actors, meaning that they're not the new rung of 20-year-olds and teens in French cinema, The Science of Sleep is like a who's who. There are so many amazing cast members in that film. And it's sort of like Eternal Sunshine did the same thing, right? You got Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet, Elijah Wood, Mark Ruffalo, David Cross, Kirsten Dunst, Tom Wilkinson. I mean, it was really... it seemed like a very small cast, but then you realize that the cast is small, but very talented and very skilled.
Very much.
Okay.
Before you guys move on,
yes,
I would like to say that I purchased The Science of Sleep out of a bargain bin at probably a Blockbuster for a couple of dollars, and I never watched the whole movie, and I couldn't remember why, but when you started talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, it was just, I didn't want to spend any time with that person. I'm like, sure.
Yeah. I
bought it and never watched the whole thing.
I can only imagine it's even more uncomfortable as a woman watching it, because it's like, this guy's a huge asshole, and every woman in the movie except for I can't remember, Christine, I think, the office chick, the blonde office chick, she's the most entertaining one because she actually has a personality and everybody else does. Charlotte Gainsbourg basically phoned in the entire thing, and apparently she's a great actress, but I haven't watched anything else with her in it.
Yeah,
straight up front with that.
I think.
Thank you for saving me from ever watching the whole thing.
You're welcome, and I'm hoping I'm saving everyone else listening too.
Oh man, I have to watch this movie now.
And Christine is played by, and I probably will say her name wrong, but it's like Meow Meow, is what her name is, and she's been acting in French cinema for decades. She's a very strong actress, and that's probably why she got that role, as the saner, the more well-balanced person. Okay, we're gonna go to our good friend Jeff. How are you doing, Jeff?
Good.
Okay, I'm glad, because you make these, just so everyone listening knows, Jeff makes hand motions when I ask him things sometimes, which is interesting because we're an audio medium. So I'm just gonna have to hire someone to just whisper into the microphone. It's like thumbs up, like asterisk wave, asterisk shark mouth. Like, I don't know. Okay, so Jeffrey, what is the movie that you love?
Well, I guess I'm getting beat up today.
We love you, Jeff. I'm happy you're here. I'm always happy for some Jeff.
So my favorite movie is clearly the best of the group, but also probably not something we would ever do on this show because I think it's a little probably too well known. It would be Snowpiercer.
Yeah.
This particular movie, I went in with zero expectations, and it kind of rocked my socks off. I've been looking for them ever since. Can't find them, but it was worth it.
Let's listen to a clip here. It's Snowpiercer, for those of you listening, from 2014, which is the film version. It's adapted from the comic book starring Chris Evans, not the new television series based off Snowpiercer, which I haven't seen the new series, but word is that it's subpar compared to the film, but we're talking about the film today. And let's listen to this clip from the trailer.
This chaos. 1,000 people in an iron box. 18 years I've hated the train. 18 years I've waited for this moment.
This is a world. The train saved humanity.
The engine lasts forever. The population must always be kept in balance.
I said sit down.
So that's the trailer. It's a tense post-apocalyptic future, but it's a different kind of post-apocalyptic future than, say, Six String Samurai, which is more what we're used to, right, Jeff?
That's correct. So this entire film takes place on a train, and we kind of open up in kind of this kind of dank, crowded, dark portion of the train that is described as the tail. And so basically all the characters that we're getting to know are these denizens of the tail. And they eat these, black bricks that are called like protein bricks or whatever. And they get these notes basically in these bricks, kind of inciting a revolution or rebellion against the front of the train, which is basically in control. They have the weapons, they have the security codes to all the doors, and at first you don't really know what this movie is. You get to know a couple of the characters in the back, and clearly there's a rebellion going to happen. But like what is this movie? And it turns out to be this science fiction film that deals with all kinds of issues from global warming, economy, class systems, societal systems, philosophical ideas. It goes kind
Child
of
labor.
all the gamuts. Yeah, child labor. There's like a million different things in it. We could talk about it for 6-7 hours, just about all of the kind of ideas that this film brings up. But it's also just a gorgeous action film, I guess. It has some beautiful scenes from the outside of the train, like the train every once in a while opens up into an area where you can see out into the world that's frozen, and theoretically all of mankind is surviving on this train and everybody else in the world is frozen to death. And without I don't want to destroy the whole film, but basically it's a adventure film where our main characters are trying to get to the front of the bus, front of the train, and take it over, basically. And it's almost like Alice in Wonderland, because they're basically going through all of these strange worlds, basically one train car at a time, and it slowly reveals what this world is, until you kind of finally get to the end of the train, and everything becomes revealed. And some lines from the earlier, you have Gillian, who's kind of the leader of the tail, all of the poor people, the have-nots,
The caboose.
Yeah, and then kind of the guy he's trying to pass the leadership off to, Chris Evans' character. And Chris Evans says, I can't be the leader because I have both my arms. And you're just this line comes through and you're like, what the hell is this guy talking about? What is that? Doesn't mean anything. Those words are meaningless. But it turns out they're very meaningful, and in kind of a pretty impactful way later. So it's just such a smart script. It lays in these kind of foundational things, but not in a boring way. You're not slogging through this dialogue being oh, this is all foreshadowing for the future. They really sneak it in there so that later on all these reveals and plot twists are just deeply satisfying.
And I'll say I missed this film when it was released, and it was a small release in the US, and I deeply regretted it because, as you said, the pedigree of this movie is incredible. And just to say, so the story is based off a French comic story, which anyone who knows heavy metal knows that French comic strips are epic in their portrayal of societal constructs put into the weirdest, most insane boxes and examined down to the most minute kind of microcosms to really show us how frankly terrible we are. And the original story is by Jacques Loeb, excuse me, my French is terrible, but Jacques Loeb, Benjamin Legrand, and Jean-Marc Rochette. And more impressively for film buffs like us, Bong Joon-ho, the famed Korean filmmaker at this point, and I would hazard to say probably the best working filmmaker in the world right now. If anyone hasn't seen Parasite that came out just last year, 2019, truly he wrote that and directed it, and it is in my opinion, the best film that I've ever seen, and probably is going to be hard to top in the way that it deals with. It manages the art of storytelling and pairs it with excellent visuals and this overwhelming amount of societal pressure subtext that anyone who is a human being will likely be able to relate to, even though the situation is hopefully for many of us kind of far-fetched. So he wrote the screenplay for this with Kelly Masterson and also directed it. And so the beautiful visuals combined with the smart script is no surprise. And for anyone who's only seen Parasite and thought, well, it's beautiful and great, but I mean, this is a science fiction movie. His first big hit was The Host, which is a sort of a reimagination of the monster film, so which is also a great film. I don't think it's on the level of Snowpiercer or of course Parasite, but I do think it's worth a watch. The film version of Snowpiercer, the TV show of course has a great cast. Jennifer Connelly is in there, who's fantastic, but the cast for the 2013-2014 film is so good. You have Kang Ho Song, who is a great Korean actor, and then you have Chris Evans, Ed Harris, our good friend John Hurt from Partners getting a good role, Tilda Swinton, who's amazing, Jamie Bell, Octavia Spencer is in this, Steve Park is in this, just really amazing. And it's a big cast. As you said, there are, every time they go through these different sort of separate worlds, so to speak, in the train cars, there's like a whole new cast. So I think that it's sort of a perfect storm with a smart script and a great cast and a good visual direction. You have a movie that I really don't understand how this movie didn't get a wide release and wasn't sort of exploded at the time. And I can only imagine it's because it was a Korean director, no matter how famous that Korean director was becoming at the time.
I mean, that's kind of why whenever somebody says like, hey, what's like a film that's like on your favorites list, I'm like, I have to say this just because like it really should have been bigger than it was.
Yeah,
it was, in my mind, underrated significantly.
And I think, and I mean, it was well received, but also, I mean, at the time, yes, it's not that long ago, but it's over 2 hours, which for what was sort of pegged as an action film is a little long. Yeah. But like you said, it's so much.
It's not an action film.
It's not an action film.
It is, but it's not.
Right.
It's more of a science fiction, I'll skip ahead to like who wants to watch this. Like
let's do it.
The people who are like really would be like people who like Star Trek. I know it's kind of like a weird connection, but it's such a complex world that they're creating, and there's so many issues built in there. I mean, it's like 5 episodes of Star Trek like jammed into one with the beautiful action. It really is like the thing that all Star Trek fans want to see in a movie. It's beautiful cinematics mixed with all of this beautiful kind of like concepts of philosophy and societies and world building and stuff.
And you get, it makes me think, when you said that, I was thinking it through, and it makes me think of the original series of Star Trek where where every single episode was, there were a few exceptions, but the vast majority were, here is this new place. It has strange customs. Let's watch this group of people who are similar to us, at least in our ideals for the time, navigate this new system and figure it out. And they're going to show us something about us by doing that. And you get, essentially the low-class citizens, with Chris Evans being the primary placeholder for us, are the normal people, right? And they're the ones that you see all this insanity, and it gets to a kernel of truth about our own operations.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to like ruin it too much. Like, there's like, there's a lot of stuff going on there. Like, are they really, the heroes? Because Chris Evans' character at the end, like he almost, buys into it. Like, he's like, he's a millimeter away. Because, I mean, again, it's like an experiment, right? And I think that's why Star Trek is so interesting. Is like, this whole thing that we're doing here on this planet, the United States, Europe, like it's all an experiment. Like we're all just like trying to like figure it out. Nobody's done it right yet. There's no prototype for like running a country perfectly. It's never happened. hopefully it will someday, but you know what I mean? There's
Yep.
none of that. So this really is more philosophical. It's like, it's really just presenting ideas. It's like, here's a thing that could happen. I'll spoil a little bit. They get to the end and it's nobody had the right answer at the end. Very clearly, it's basically chaos, like Chris Evans said in the
trailer.
The trailer there. There's no like nice resolution. It's not like, well, the people in the back had a better answer than Wilford and his pretty clearly wrong answer, but you know what I mean? Like, like who knows maybe that was the most optimum way to do it.
And I think, interestingly enough, for our more schlocky cult film lovers like myself, it sort of reminded me of the 1998 film that Mystery Science Theater loves and Riff Tracks did as well recently live in the last couple of years, Space Mutiny from 1998, where the idea is that Earth was no longer livable. So, and this has been done in better science fiction novels as well. But they built this giant space ark and basically like, okay, in however many generations of people who are all going to live on this ship, they will eventually get to a planet. And halfway in between, a group is like, nope, we're going to make a deal with these pirates and get the hell off here because we're not going to live our lives on a ship. And it's sort of like at that kind of interesting, it reminded me of that at a much more elevated level. And I also want to say, because I thought it was interesting, the guy who directed Space Mutiny 1998, which has a slight attachment to this, his name is David Winters, and he actually played Arab in West Side Story. So interesting little tidbit there. So sounds good. Snowpiercer, love it. Star Trek fans.
All right, favorite the moment though that my favorite moment was, and this was the part where I just like fell in love. They open a door and there's just this like army of people, and it was just like, oops, we probably shouldn't open that door. So there basically is the army of the tail facing off against this army of the front. But the army of the front is weird as fuck. They're all like wearing like full leather like outfits, and they have axes.
What's weird about that, Jeff?
Blooding their axe in a fish. And that kind of comes into play a little bit later. We kind of start to understand the metaphor of the fish. But anyways, at the time you're just like, what? What's going on? And it's just and then like halfway through that scene, they stop and do a countdown for New Year's, and it's so strange, but like it somehow just fit. Like it's like, oh yeah, that would happen in this world. Like it just, all of it clicks. And so there's just so many beautiful details in this thing that is just.
And
really
I don't want to rag on anyone who loves like there's so many things I love that my wife is like, how can you like that? That is hot garbage. And I'm like, no, but to me, it gives me something I'm looking for. And I don't want to say that's the case for people who like, say, Hunger Games, which fine, that's just your thing. That's cool. But it's sort of like how people acted where they were very impressed by Hunger Games sort of world building and this sort of insane culture that could build off of what we have now. And it sounds like Snowpiercer takes that to like the true level of, no, this is what would be insane. And you can trace it all the way back to logic that we have now.
Yeah.
You know, it's awesome. You've got me sold. It's been on my list for a while. I will definitely check that out.
Well, you haven't seen it yet?
I have not seen it. I have not seen it. I know. This is where it comes out. But see, that's why we do these things.
Dude, go watch it tonight. It's on Netflix.
I will absolutely.
Wait, no, I won't. No, I didn't say that. I will not give you my password. You're gonna have to pay for that shit yourself.
I have Netflix. I spend all the money I don't have. Anyway, on things where I can watch things that it's been sitting in my queue since it came out on Netflix. So that's been quite a few years now. All right, we're going to move on. What film do you hate?
All right. I mean, I think almost everyone described except for Greg, an element of expectation. So this movie came out in 2001, and it was heavily like advertised on some channels or something at the time. And I remember like specifically like kept, bringing up like Jet Li as like a producer of the film. And this was like kind of in the time when he was doing some like amazing stuff. This was kind of like at the peak of his career. He was like doing all kinds of epic films.
He'd come off of being the villain in Lethal Weapon 4, and American audiences saw him and loved him. And all of a sudden he started, which was 98, I think. And all of a sudden he started like being all over the place. So by 2001, he was like an action icon in the US.
Yeah. So, so I was sold on it. And unfortunately, it is, hot garbage. And, obviously had enough, like, I think even Mel Gibson was on the
He was
ads.
a producer. That is correct. They both produced it.
Not to say that he hasn't ruined his own brand, his own way, but at that time he was hot shit too. So, I was sold. I bought into the marketing. I was excited about this film. I actually bought it, and it came in a box. I remember opening the box. I opened the package. I put the DVD right in. I started watching it, and basically this movie has, the soundtrack of My Inner Child Dying. That's what the soundtrack is, because I immediately was just like, oh, this, all the, like, that excitement, that built up, it was turning into like this jaded jackass that I am now. And that was, one of the moments that was, building into that. And now I know, people are going to sell shit based on, a brand. You go to the store and you get a shirt that says Gap on it. It's a garbage shirt that's going to disintegrate in like 2 weeks. They're selling you a name. I actually don't know anything about Gap, so maybe their shirts are great. I'm just giving you, like, it's a common thing. I learned it then, with My Inner Child Dying. But like, this movie really is, it's like if the Power Rangers tried to do like Ang Lee or
that is a really
Zhang
good
Yimou.
description. That's a really good description. Let's listen to this clip, because we're going to hear Billy Zane talk, and I'm a huge Billy Zane fan.
Love him.
But there's no question. I mean, my wife and her entire family, they constantly quote, "You like lamb, don't you, sweet pea?" from his character in Titanic all the time. He's a great actor, great guy, as far as I know. He could be a terrible person. I don't know him personally. Billy, give us a call. Let me know. CultandClassicPodcast@gmail.com. But what I will say is, he's forced to deliver some really, really questionable dialogue in this movie, and this clip's going to show it to us. This is from Invincible 2001. This is the second film in 2001 to come out called Invincible. This is the TV movie version that stars Billy Zane. So let's take a listen.
This tablet was unearthed yesterday. Extremely powerful. I have one half, the Shadow Men have the other. If the Shadow Men put the two halves together, they'll have the key to opening the vortex. We have 4 days to stop them. If we don't, the air will become fire, the oceans will boil, and metal will rain from the skies.
Yeah, so literally, this is what I imagine happened there. I imagine Billy Zane came out of he didn't have a trailer for this, let's be honest. He came out of his car. They directed him where to go. They gave him like a black robe. And they said, this is inside a warehouse or a dance club. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Just go in there. And you're going to say something about a tablet destroying the world if they get two halves. This could be any single movie from the 90s featuring, which again is 2001, featuring a tablet that's broken into two. Like this Jackie Chan Adventures saw this and said, no, we're going to do this way better. So I'm going to let you take this away.
I mean, I actually haven't watched it since then. I tried a little bit. Like I gave it like just the smallest effort to go and find it. I found like a 10-minute clip on YouTube for this film. I don't remember it. I'll be honest with you. It's bad. Like the dialogue's bad. The story's bad. The effects are bad. The fight scenes are bad. They literally put together a pretty nice trailer off of, just something that could not possibly be cut into like scenes.
Well, and like you said, it was heavily pushed on TV because that's where it aired.
Yeah.
It was a TV movie. And what's crazy about it is it was aired as being produced by Mel Gibson and Jet Li, and everybody remembered, oh man, I like at the time, like Lethal Weapon 4 had come out on video, and it was like, oh yeah, that was so great, and they were so great together, and that ending fight scene. And then when it came out, both of them had their names removed off it. So in the credits, if you watch the originals, they're not listed, even though they did in fact produce the film along with some other people. And also, here's some interesting fact. So the writers, there are 5 writers on this, which is always a good sign. Two of them, to be fair, just worked on the story, and they're the writing pair of Carrie W. Hayes and Chad Hayes, who wrote the Conjuring series, the 1 and 2, as well as Whiteout with Kate Beckinsale, which was based on a comic book, which was okay, and the 2005 House of Wax, which was actually decent. So they've written a lot of horror films. They did the story for this, which again I assume is just a photocopy of the back of a Power Rangers VHS box with the name scratched out. And then the actual script writers are Michael Brandt and Derek Haas, and they've both worked together on a variety of action films, some of them pretty decent. I mean, they wrote the 3:10 to Yuma remake in 2007 with Russell Crowe and Christian Bale. They did the Wanted comic book adaptation in 2008, which, you know, it works. They also wrote Too Fast, Too Furious, so I don't know, you're 50-50. But again, these are people that actually work, and they write scripts that are better than this one. But also I will say that Jeffrey Levy, who is the director of this film, also had a hand in writing it. And you always wonder, that one person that throws everything off, you always wonder if that's him, because Jeffrey Levy has not made a great deal of high-profile films, and he tends to direct one episode of things. Which, you know,
he's like a for-hire director, basically.
Yes, and not really sure. He never stays on a project very long. I don't know if that tells us something. Sometimes it does. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but not a clue about his career after this. But this seemed to be the attempt to break into the mainstream, and wow, did it not work? Yeah. So let's go into do you have a worst moment for this one?
Honestly, it was just the soul crushing moment there. Yeah, just the losing of faith in people was really the thing that I hated. Probably I think the thing that got me is there's a scene where, and I got this from rewatching that bit. So one character is running, and then a character runs behind them, and then kind of like jumps on. I'm sorry, I have to do this with my hands. I will try to describe this clearly. Jumps onto their shoulders with their legs, like over their shoulders, but they're like leaning all the way back. So they're basically making, an
upside down capital L.
An upside down capital L. Thank you. And then another person comes up and runs and jumps onto the chest of the top part,
the
bar
horizontal
of the L,
person,
and gets launched kind of like a catapult with this weird, awkward thing, and it looks. It looks ridiculous. It's like a ridiculous premise. The whole thing, it's so laughable, but like not funny at the same time. I don't know. It was painful.
Are you sure you just weren't watching Cirque du Soleil?
Man, if people were actually doing that and it wasn't just some bad wire work, it would be so amazing.
I remember wire work in 2000s.
Yeah.
So I mean, and if you're hearing that and you're thinking of like Joseph Nicole or McGee, the director who did the 2000 Charlie's Angels series, who I will defend, okay, because those were fine, and he did a good job with Terminator Salvation, in my opinion. But you're right on, but worse. Like at least he knew that physics were not going to be at play in his directing. Invincible really has these things, because I was super excited. I remember I was staying at my grandparents' house in Phoenix, Arizona, which is not where I lived, and I was like, I found some videotape they had somewhere, and I recorded over that videotape at their house in order to to capture what was sure to be the best film to be a TV movie in many a moon. And I was as gobsmacked as you were at how truly bad this movie was. Now, are there worse films? Sure. Sure. Is there any reason why this film was this bad? No, absolutely not. Never in a million years. I don't understand why this was done so poorly. And it actually has a decent cast. It's got a lot of stunt people playing roles, which is always a nice thing to give. And of course, it has Billy Zane. It also has Dominic Purcell from Prison Break and Blade Trinity. He played Dracula. So I mean, it's not like they had no talent, right? Like, I mean, there were things to do in this movie that there were things to work with, and they didn't do it. And
why did they push it so hard? Why couldn't they have just been like, we made a shitty film, let's just let it slide out in the night, play off the kind of the cheesiness of it, sell it like a Power Rangers, sell
it like a Sharknado.
Yeah, you know exactly. What I mean? Sell it what it is.
And this is what if you look for the current DVD release, which is still in circulation, the cover, they always have a blurb. I don't know how hard they had to find something that they could chop all grammar out of to make it sound like a positive, because the only one they have is Matrix-like martial arts with an exclamation point from the Austin Chronicle. Now, I bet you there was no exclamation point at the end of that original quote. I bet you that sentence read, failed Matrix-like martial arts makes viewers question their decision to buy a television. Like, that's what I imagine that sentence read like.
Yes.
But with that said, I will say this is a unique oddity. The DVD even still says executive produced by Mel Gibson and Jet Li, yet the credits, unless they've changed it since its original airing, of which I have a VHS copy of somewhere, their names were removed from the production. So I don't know what favor was being called in by Jeffrey Levy to get this done. I don't know, but that's what it was.
Nate, you would own a copy.
Oh yeah. That's not a question. I run Cult and Classic podcast. Jeff, what movie would you recommend people watch instead of Invincible 2001 by Jeffrey Levy?
I got an answer for you, sir. All right. So one, if you want some science fiction action, which is kind of what this was kind of trying to be billed as, go watch Equilibrium. Came out kind of in a similar time period and is freaking awesome. Mm-hmm. If you haven't seen it, it's
Daniel Craig, right?
Christian Bale.
I
think it would still, because the action in that has like such a kind of like unique style and like kind of visual appearance to it, like the whole thing. It's I think it would still be interesting.
And interestingly enough, Dominic Purcell is also in that film. So
he got around back then.
Yeah.
So so I would go with that if you want the science fiction action. If you just want some good wire work, go watch almost any of the kind of those epic movies that Jet Li and Jackie Chan were making during that period. Go watch Hero, House of the Flying Daggers. Go back for Ang Lee's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Watch something good with some like good wire work, like, because I think that stuff even holds up now, because it's just it's beautiful art.
It's ballet mixed with your martial arts.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Any Sue Hark work is great too. So yeah, I think that's a solid recommendation. All right, we've come to my choices. Now I'll keep it relatively brief here, but this is a clip from the trailer for my I Love It film.
Wanna talk tough movies? Here's a superhero with the biggest pair of all.
You looking for me?
There she was, just walking down the street singing.
Miss Elvira is a slimy, slithering succubus, a concubine, a streetwalker, a tramp.
Yes, she's got it all.
Yes, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, 1988. This is one of my all-time favorite go-to films. Of course, Elvira is a character that started on late-night horror movies, where she would introduce and make fun, sort of all the Mystery Science Theater, pre-Mystery Science Theater horror films. Cassandra Peterson is the actress who plays Elvira and has made Elvira both a household name and truly a business which has spanned her life. And she's phenomenal, and she's my hero. And this movie was her first feature-length film. There's a second one that came out many moons later in the 2000s called Elvira's Haunted Hills, which is a period film. It's still entertaining, but this one, the original, hour and 36 minutes of gold. This is truly a great movie, in my opinion. James Signorelli directed this film, and James, he made plenty of cult famous movies. He also worked on a lot of films. He worked on Phantom of Paradise, which was Brian De Palma, interesting film. He's worked on Saturday Night Live as director for, 30 million years, since the 90s to now, or almost now. So it's got that sort of schlocky comedy pedigree. And it really plays out like the best of the 80s comedies. There's some weird action scenes. There's a funny dog with a colored mohawk. There's tons of sex jokes, but it's all in this PG-13 realm, and it's really great. And you've got Phil Rubenstein plays a director in an interesting sort of meta moment. Tress MacNeille is in it. If you watch it, you'll be like, oh, I've seen every single person on this in other 80s films. And that's sort of where this movie lives, solidly in the late 80s. There's some of the humor is so dorky that it's charming. I mean, you'd think things that sound terrible, they're actually funny. You find yourself laughing, even though you're like, this is dumb. Like when she's trying to eat a hot dog from the gas station in the car and the hot dog falls into the bun between her breasts. You're like, that's not funny, but I'm laughing. Why does it work? And it's all because of Cassandra Peterson's charm as this character. She's sultry, but super ditzy, but also very confident and self-established. And it's sort of what we all, I would think, strive to be, is like, I don't have to be the smartest one in the room. I just have to be me, and that's going to work. And it totally does for her. And it centers around her helping a hunky, dorky, really dumb guy rebuild a theater so they can show old schlocky horror movies. And it ends with a hilarious music number with Elvira doing like an 80s rap montage while she's twirling pasties. It's way out there. It's a great film. If nobody's ever seen this movie, I don't know what you're doing with your life, but it's clearly off the rails and you need to watch this film. It's an interesting history for this. It sort of had some troubled production. It had a distribution deal because it was produced by NBC, by New World Pictures. But just when it was going to hit theaters, New World filed for bankruptcy. New World Pictures made a lot of great cult films, or rather distributed a lot of great cult films. And the movie, like, it was supposed to hit nationwide. It was cut dramatically to like a few thousand theaters to a few hundred. So real bad. Critics ripped it apart. They stopped promoting the film and it bombed. But it became a bestseller on VHS and one of the highest rated views when NBC aired it in 1990, 2 years later. So what comes around goes around. And I also, as an interesting fact, I don't know if they still do this. I work for colleges and I in my other life, and I'm not sure that this is still a thing, but it used to be that when you applied for college, you would have an option or you'd be required to put down a quote from someone that you admired. Do you guys remember having to do that at all? Yep. So I don't know if you guys remember who you chose for a quote. I think they've done away with that. It's probably a good idea considering how many celebrities and comedians have now been accused or convicted of terrible crimes. It's probably a wise decision. But on every single application, including my grad application, I put down this quote from Elvira from this film, which is, I'm going to read it to you verbatim. When all is said and done, I only ask that people remember me by two simple words. Any two, as long as they're simple. That truly, and that's why I didn't get into college for a few years.
That computes, man. That tracks.
I love this movie, and it makes me super happy. My favorite scene, I don't know. every single scene she's in makes me happy, but that is a cop-out. I do like when the evil sorcerer, Vincent, who's trying to steal her essentially Book of Shadows grimoire that's been given to her. There's like this great battle, and there's these super 80s special effects that actually hold up pretty well because many of them are practical effects, and he turns into a demon. And that's just a great, anytime somebody turns into a demon and it's practical effects, you have me. So you have all this schlocky humor, and then you have that, and it's fantastic. And there's lots of digs against conservative culture in this film. The town where she ends up going to after she gives her film career or TV career the boot is called Falwell, after Jerry Falwell. I know we've mentioned that piece of hot garbage before, but it's great, and it's just a big FU to conservative ideology and anti-feminism and all these things, and I love it. I'd recommend this movie to anyone who likes 80s movies or 90s movies. It really straddles the line. You absolutely have to watch it. If that trailer did anything for you at all, even the slightest, you need to watch this movie. It holds up. It should be watched with Dumb and Dumber. It should be watched with every goofball comedy that's still worth watching.
I knew I recognized it because, Nathan, the only movie I've watched more than Rocky Horror Picture Show is Elvira, because it was on TV weekly, and every time I just sit down and watch it. I can't even tell you how many times I watched it.
And it has all the great cliches, like when she has to get tough near the end, she walks into a sporting goods store and walks out with like banana clips hanging off and like shells and machine guns. It's just ridiculous. She has a bazooka at one point. Fantastic stuff. And most of it is just a teen comedy up until then. We're going to get to the last movie of the day. I know this has been a long haul. This is the movie I hate. I hate this movie. This is the film that actually made it so I can no longer do jury duty, because when they ask me if you can understand how a person could kill a person, I say yes, because I saw Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life. This film from 2011, I'm just going to play this clip from the trailer, and then I will tell you why I hate this film.
There are two ways through life. The way of nature and the way of grace. You have to choose which one you'll follow.
We're alligators.
You'll be grown before that tree is tall.
So here's a question to the panel. First off, have any of you seen this film?
No.
I'm getting no's. Okay.
No?
Can you tell me the plot of this film from that clip?
No.
Then you understand the plot of this film. There is no plot to this steaming pile of wet drive-through restaurant garbage. Because here's the thing. It has a stunning cast, an amazing cast, high production values, and it's got Terrence Malick's name on it, so people lose their mind. I was in my undergrad when this film came out, and I remember going into poetry class after seeing this movie, and I mentioned it because we were reading a poem, and I'm like, this is willfully obtuse. This is the most, this is intentionally not making sense to make people feel kind of like, I don't know, to make them feel stupid or like to fake some sort of intelligent content. And I said, it's like the film Tree of Life. And this girl, who I will not name names because I forgot her name, who was across the room, said, I love that movie. It was beautiful. And I wanted to burn the building down because that, and I'm not going to do that. Don't pull this episode. But yes, it was that bad. This movie, for the first maybe quarter or third of this film, Terrence Malick directs a sort of period piece family drama. It's like a slice of life where Brad Pitt is this very well acted sort of troubled dad. It takes place mostly in 1956 in Waco, Texas, who puts a lot of pressure on his oldest son And clearly he's got Brad Pitt's character has some problems. He puts a lot of pressure on, but it's never like, it's very realistic. It's never an overly abusive or oppressive environment, but there's this tension there. His wife is played by Jessica Chastain, very beautiful, very talented. Whenever you can't get Bryce Dallas Howard, Jessica Chastain should be your next pick. So it's very, and it's actually quite good, although you don't really see anywhere that it's going. It's a very realistic portrayal, and it is very beautifully shot. Then Terrence Malick starts to introduce magical realism with all the subtlety of a shotgun shell in the microwave. Like, it is pure insanity. All of a sudden, Jessica Chastain's character is floating in the yard, floating, and no one's saying anything. Then we go on a 20-minute journey through a cloudscape where characters whisper things that mean absolutely nothing, like, "You'll know the dream when you get it. I know you will. You'll get there." Then, okay, you're in the clouds, okay? Then we get, I think, a scene of another slice of life, and then we pan out from Little Waco, Texas. We pan out, we keep panning. We're in the stratosphere. We keep panning. We're all of a sudden, we are outside in space. And then we're panning all the way out to the Big Bang. And then we have the Big Bang in its 3D splendor. And we zoom in to planet Earth when there were dinosaurs. And there is a sick 3D animated dinosaur who's struggling to breathe and lying on the shore of some primordial beach. And we have another dinosaur walk up to it, and slowly, as if testing if it could sustain its weight, steps on its head. Step, step. And then we pan out again, and then we go back to 1956 Waco. And then the film jumps to Sean Penn, who is that little boy grown up, working in an office building in, I assume, New York City. And he stares off into space often, gives zero anything to anyone. I don't know if Sean Penn eventually develops dementia, which God forbid, I hope he doesn't. But if he does, this is the look he will have all day long. Stares out a window, and then eventually walks through a door and is on a beach with a bunch of other weird middle-class people in bad suits standing with doorways standing in the sand, and he walks through various doorways that lead nowhere because it's a fucking doorway on the beach. That is this movie, Tree of Life. This movie is 2 hours and 19 minutes. 2 hours and 19 minutes of that. And it's not even entertaining to watch. There's a dinosaur stepping on another dinosaur's head, and I'm telling you not to watch it. Because it is that...
This movie sounds like a bunch of jarred farts.
He literally must have taken, like... This is what I assume happened. I assume Terrence Malick, sits down when he works on a script, and he's like, oh, this doesn't really work here. And he cuts it out with an X-Acto knife, like William S. Burroughs, and then he throws it in a fish jar, in a fish, tank. And then when that's full, he takes all of them out and he glues them into a piece of paper and said, this is my next project. Okay? It is this sort of, it's sort of an Andy, if there's anything I will say for this film, The Tree of Life is an Andy Kaufman-esque joke on viewers. It is an insane attempt to pretend through sheer pretentiousness that there is value in what it's showing you by making you think it's smarter than you. And it may be smarter than you. I don't know, listeners, your intelligence, but it is not better than you. It is by far worse than you.
Well, isn't that the tagline for the Cannes Film Fest? All of that.
Yes, it absolutely should have been. He's passed away now, God rest his soul, but my wife's grandfather was a very interesting but tough Sicilian guy named Guy. Everyone knew him because he talked to everyone. Some people ran into the wrong side of him on the wrong day, and it was very rough for them. But we went to see this film with him. There were, I don't know, maybe 8 of us in the theater, my wife, me, and then her grandfather and her grandmother. And this happened 25 minutes, just that turning point when things started to get weird into that film. And he wasn't a small guy. What the hell's going on? Does anybody tell me what the hell's going on? In the theater. And No one told him to shush or shut up. One person in the front burst out laughing, and another person to our left said, I don't know. That's literally how this went the whole time. And if it hadn't been for guys' constant questioning, reminding me that I was not insane and that what I was watching was some sort of cosmic joke, I would never have been able to make it through. But once you made it through about 40 minutes, even though this film was 2 hours and 19 minutes long, you couldn't not watch it, because there was no way in hell I was going to leave that film early and have somebody else tell me and potentially convince me that, well, of course you don't get it. You didn't see the whole thing. I stayed through the credits, motherfucker. That's a bad movie. That's a bad movie.
So is
All
this
right.
like an even shittier version of Cloud Atlas?
Oh, way.
I was just going to say, it sounds like someone tried to put Cloud Atlas and The Fountain together.
Okay.
And like,
I have
also
a high
trip balls.
tolerance. Yeah, I have a high tolerance for sort of dry, drudging science fiction magical realism, because at least like The Fountain or Cloud Atlas, there are these visual elements that keep me sort of engaged, even though I know that what they're selling me is just gold-plated trash. Like, I know that it looks nice and it's going to taste like garbage, but the wrapper's pretty, so I will watch. This one, as beautiful as the cinematography often is, it's sort of like one of those when I walked in the sand, there were 2 pairs of footprints, God was following me. One of those posters in like your great aunt's living room became a film on its own. Like, it just slowly transitioned into a film medium without anyone understanding or noticing. That's what it became. And I'm like, no, there is no substance beneath the shallow veneer. And I would love to interview Terrence Malick on this. I'll be very cordial, Terrence. If you want to come on, I would love to discuss it with you. You're very accomplished in life. I would love to have the success you've had, but I'll tell you something. This film, if he'd stuck with an actual prosaic approach, he didn't need anything else, because we understood as viewers the story of this father who's kind of struggling with this confined 1950s sense of manhood and imparting it to his children while seemingly conflicted about it. We get that. That's actually quite beautiful and troubling and something we could talk about. But when you try and make it a universal world and just, cosmos containing idea, no, it isn't. It isn't. I guarantee you, no fucking dinosaur had a problem explaining to his child that being a man sometimes meant doing things you didn't want to do or didn't agree with. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. Unless by stepping on someone's head while they're dying, that was an indication that life sucks, it's tough, I'm going to go keep on living. I guess maybe that's what he was going for, but I don't think so. And even if he was, 20 minutes of cloud flying with weird ASMR whispering was not worth the journey. Okay.
I can't wait to watch this film. It's on Hulu, and I will be getting a Hulu subscription next month when I cancel my Netflix.
Everyone, it's also on HBO if anybody wants to watch Tree of Life. I will tell you this. I
love torturing myself.
I will tell you this.
It's such a masochist.
The Metascore critic, the Metascore, the aggregate critic ratings is 85 out of 100. And IMDb scores it at a 6.8. Both of those things are probably inflated by people being afraid to say that this is a bad movie.
There is an element to that, right? Like if it's kind of artsy, they're like,
sure.
The art community's not gonna like me if
I
don't like it.
I feel like that's how I feel about The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Okay.
Like the level of passion that Tad and Nate brought, like that's my movie for me.
Okay.
Story.
I'll also say this. I meant to say this. If you really want to be able to converse with hipsters who are even more conceited and ridiculously pompous than myself about this movie, then watch the Blu-ray version that was released by Criterion in 2018, because it's 3 hours and 9 minutes long.
I knew it.
That's 3 hours of torture.
It's literally. Sadomasochists could just have this film. Their apartments could be empty, but for a DVD player and a copy of this film and a television. And they would never need a partner. There's no satisfaction greater than this could be gotten. It's terrible. And I also enjoyed reading all of the users' reviews who lament the lack of this quality of cinema in other places and at other times. And to them, I say, you're terrible. You're terrible. You're terrible. I don't understand. The frequently asked questions, though, are really great. Who is speaking in the opening dialogue? Why is Miss O'Brien seen floating beneath a tree at one point? Why the constant narration? Is Tree of Life based on a book? No, not unless it's a book that is printing paper. I don't understand. What is going on at the end of the film? Why is this being so heavily compared to Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey? That question I can answer, because people are stupid. Because 2001: A Space Odyssey is brilliant because it literally, first off, it's brilliant because it made people watch a pretty good sci-fi thriller movie that both started with the beginning of tool use and ended with a 15-minute beautiful journey through cosmic scenery to see a giant space baby. Now, is it out there? Absolutely. But the level to be insane that Terrence Malick went through with The Tree of Life is beyond the pale. Kubrick was like, I can make a movie. See? Now watch this and try and get something out of it because you trust me now because I showed you a movie. Terrence Malick didn't do that. He said, trust me, I'm Terrence fucking Malick. And that doesn't work.
So we're going to watch this as a double feature with like what? Like Birth of a Nation or something?
Yeah, I can't. So clearly I could have had you know what? I'm sorry to put you through this. Listeners, I hope you've enjoyed this special love-hate episode of Cult and Classic Podcast. It's replacing my therapy session. And listen next week for part 2 of why I hate Tree of Life. I'm just kidding. There won't be a part 2. But I urge you guys... I urge you guys to think deeply about film, enjoy it for what it is, and if you don't like something, that's okay. It doesn't have to not exist, but think about why you don't like it. Because when you can tell people why you don't like it, it shows that you're smart, but it also shows that we have different opinions. With that said, don't vote for Donald Trump. This is Nate Wyckoff here on cultandclassicpodcast.com. Go ahead and
fiery and political.
Go ahead and listen to all of our fantastic episodes. Thank you so much, Tad Mastroianni, Jeff Tucker, Mandy Longley, Greg Johnson. To play us out, as always, we have the wonderful The Chud with their song All About Evil. I want to let everybody know again that you can reach us at cultandclassicpodcast@gmail.com. Visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/cultandclassicpodcast, or Instagram @cultandclassicpodcast. And remember that you can donate at patreon.com/cultandclassicpodcast. Get free stuff from us. It's not really free because you're donating money to us, but you can pretend it's free and you're just paying us to be awesome. Thanks so much. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to Cult and Classic Podcast. This podcast is important to me, but what's more important are the rights, privileges, and freedom from violence of everyone in this country and in this world. And that means supporting Black Lives Matter. If you'd like to make a donation, please go ahead and visit cultandclassicpodcast.com, where we have a list of places you can donate and help out. And please stay safe.